All right, so now essentially I've explained to you what Zapier is, all right? I've showed you a couple use cases on how I personally use Zapier to help me in my business and manage my software development firm and manage the 30 people that actually work for me. We've created a very simple Zapier Zap, all right? So before we go any further, before we move forward, there's just a few things that I want you to know, all right? Now, the main thing that I want you to know is I know you saw me just come in here and I hit this run button, all right? I hit this run button and I said run. You do not have to do that, all right? Now, I want you to know this is obviously an automation platform, so everything's gonna be automated for you. But I do want you to understand that there is a time delay here. And the time delay actually depends on two things, all right? It depends on the actual application that you're using, all right? If you come over, if you look at Google Sheets, you don't see that it says instant. If we come over here to my ClickFunnels, you'll see in my ClickFunnels, all these things say instant. If they say instant, what that means, unless you're a theoretical physicist or a mathematician, it means instant. Not literally instant within picoseconds, but within one or two seconds. We're gonna call it pseudo instant. It's instant enough for most people, like I said, unless you're a theoretical physicist and picoseconds have, you know, a huge amount of value to you. If you're not one of those crazy guys, then it is virtually instant. But the things that are instant are only zaps that you see that say instant. If they do not say instant, then it is not an instant zap, all right? Like for example, what we just did, if you look here, it doesn't say instant, all right? It says that it's not instant, all right? So what that means is there's going to be a time delay, and that actual time delay depends on the amount of money that you pay Zapier, all right? If you're on one of their low price plans, it's 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, these zaps will run. If you're on one of their higher price plans, then it's 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, the zaps will run, all right? So I wanna kind of make you understand the difference between instant zaps and non-instant zaps, and the difference between push and polling, all right? So essentially, you're gonna get a little bitty, tiny lesson from me. All right, so here we go. Here is an application, all right? We're gonna call this a web app. Now, in our example just now, we use Google Sheets as our application. Now, here is Zapier, all right? And in our example, Zapier is Zapier, all right? So now the first thing is non-instant, all right? I'm sorry, I can't do this very well. I need to actually get my pen pad out. Non-instant. All right, this is known as polling, all right? Now tier 5, we have 7 different Zapier apps that are in the Zapier market, and some of them use polling and some of them don't. What polling means is that every time interval X, remember this time interval X is actually dependent on how much money, it's dependent on how much money you pay Zapier, all right? So the more money that you pay, the faster that it is, all right? So this is either going to be 5 minutes or 15 minutes, all right? But what you need to understand about polling is that every X minutes, Zapier is going to come out to the web application, to whatever application, in our instance, Google Sheets, and it's going to ask this application, hey, do you have any new data for me? And it's going to say, yes, I have all this data, all these data's right here, and then it's going to be sent back to Zapier, all right? And it actually moves in a straight line, not in a little zigzag line, but you get the point, all right? So that is one thing I want you to be aware of. And the reason that I want you to be aware of that is because what could happen, for example, is we could go into our Google Sheet and we could go and add 100 pieces of data within 15 minutes. And what you need to be aware of is that Zapier is only going to go out once every 15 minutes to Google Sheets and say, hey, give me new data. And if you've added 150 different new pieces of data there, then Google Sheets is going to hand Zapier back 150 new pieces of data. And depending on what your automation is doing, you may or may not like that scenario. For example, if your application is taking those Google Sheets and it's sending out a phone call to your phone through text in bulk called a sales bridge, where it calls your phone and says, hey, you have a new lead, press 1 to talk to that lead, and you press 1 and it calls that lead and you get connected through a sales bridge and you have a conversation. Well, guess what? It's very possible that what's going to happen is you put 150 pieces of data in that spreadsheet because you've got a bunch of leads coming in, and then 15 minutes from now, Zapier is going to go out to Google Sheets. It's going to grab 150 records, and your phone's going to literally ring 150 times at once. And you're going to be like, what the fuck is going on? Well, for that, you need to actually understand how this process works, which is what I'm telling you. All right? So there's process one. Process one is called polling. All right? That is called polling. And Zapier, every X amount of time, will go out to the application, that's your trigger, and it's going to ask them, hey, do you have any new data for me? And whatever new data exists there is just going to be sent to Zapier all at once, and that automation is going to run that many times. All right? Now, with the instant, like you saw ClickFunnels, if you look at the tier 5 Zapier applications, a lot of those are also instant. All right? We do not use polling. Any instant thing that you see, if you see a Zapier application and your trigger says instant, they do not use polling. What they use, instant, all right, it's called push. And I can't draw with my mouse. If this bothers you and you don't like my drawing, then just don't show up to my training because it's not going to get better, all right? So this is push. I mean, it will get better if I go hook up my little pen, but I don't want to. And how push works is literally anytime a new event comes into your application, so as soon as a new event comes into your application gives that event to Zapier, all right? That's how it works. So the only way that you would have to worry about Zapier getting multiple things at once and firing multiple things at once is if you have multiple events coming in here. If you have multiple events in here, as soon as you get the event come in here, the application is going to push that event over to Zapier, and Zapier will be notified about it almost immediately, all right, within a few seconds. All right, so I've showed you already an example of a polling event in this Google Sheets that we just created. So in this Google Sheets that we just created, I showed you an example of a polling event, and I'm going to now show you an example of an instant event in this very next video, and we're going to make another Zap in this very next video, okay? And you'll get to see the difference.